The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world on the Talk Star Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That's 1-877-528-8255. And we're coming to you live from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Right now we're trying to contact our guest of this hour, Serenity. I believe it's Serenity who's supposed to be on. Just let's check to see what's going on over here. Master Control, do you have Serenity yet by any chance? You don't? All right, so why don't you just try the number that I just sent you, and we'll go to the next guest, and we'll bring Serenity on later. Ed Humes is going to be on with me in a few moments. We're going to be talking about Earth Day, which is this April 22nd. And we're going to be celebrating the spirit of being green and invite award-winning journalist Edward Humes on to be our guest to introduce us and you, the X Zone Nation, to today's environmental heroes. Now, Americans are beginning to realize that the state and fate of the environment is at a critical juncture. We all have heard about this on television. We watch CNN, we watch the Discovery Channel, we watch National Geographic. We've all seen the pictures of the ice melting. We've all seen the pictures of the polar bears frantically looking for an ice floe to get onto. But they're melting. And then you've got the people who are saying, God, global warming is nothing else but a bunch of bunk. It's not. Look at what's happening to Greenland. The ice is melting. The polar caps are melting. The carbon dioxide is on a steady increase. Look at the smog in Los Angeles. Never mind Los Angeles. Look at the smog here in Hamilton, Steeltown, Canada. Do you think we've waited too long? Do you think we've done too much damage to the environment, the atmosphere? Can we turn it around? Well, call me what you want, but I believe it's never too late to right a wrong. It'll take a lot of hard work, dedication. We have to come up with solid plans to incorporate alternative energy. It's a must. We have to. Look what we're doing to ourselves. Look what we're doing to this planet. Look what's happening with the garbage that we dispose of. Some of it doesn't decompose. Plastic. Look what we've done to the birds with beer what do you call them? The things the beer cans come in. The plastic that are chucked out. We're killing things. It's crazy, but this is what we humans are doing not only to our planet, but to the plants, the animals, the birds, the fish that we live with. Look what the pollution is doing to the oceans and the rivers. Look what global warming is doing to the oceans. It's crazy. We have to do something about it, X Zone Nation. And when I come back from this 2-minute commercial break, we're going to be speaking with Edward Humes. And we're going to be talking about Earth Day 2009. Earth Day is April the 22nd of this year. And we're going to be talking about global warming, resource depletion, and pollution, and how these are threatening the natural world, as well as our own health, wealth, and survival. 1-877-528-8255 is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. And Edward Humes is my guest when I return in 2 minutes after this commercial break. If you'd like to give us a call and share your pro stories for Earth Day, or if somebody's really ticking you off about how they're polluting, give us a call. We'd love to hear that as well at 1-877-528-8255. My name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone, live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. We'll be back in 2 minutes right after this break.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. There's been a slight programming change. Our final guest tonight, Serenity Moore, will not be joining us. There was a family emergency, and all I can say is that our prayers are with you, Serenity, and we'll seek the assistance and guidance of angels to help you through your trying times right now. My guest this hour is Edward Humes, and he received the Pulitzer Prize for his newspaper reporting on the military and a Penn Center U.S. Award for his book, No Matter How Loud I Shout, A Year in the Life of Juvenile Court. His latest books are Monkey Girl, Evolution, Education, Religion, and the Battle for America's Soul, and now under development with HBO Films, and Eco Barons, the dreamers, schemers, and millionaires who are saving the planet. Joining me now is Edward Humes. And Edward, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks, Rob.
Edward, first of all, global warming, is it real or is it a joke?
It's definitely not a joke. It's strangely in the same position as a subject of my earlier book, Evolution, was that you just mentioned, where there's some very attractive ideas floating around out there that are disguised as science, alternatives to evolution on the one hand, and global warming denial on the other, but they're just really ploys and distractions. They're not real science, and unfortunately, if anything, the picture is a bit more dire than most people and politicians are willing to admit on the climate front.
Why are they
very serious business?
Why are they failing to admit it, and why are those out there who get on a soapbox saying global warming is nothing else but a sham?
Well, probably because they don't understand the science and don't have a grasp of the facts, and they're engaging in wishful thinking. Because who wants to believe that we have a climate cataclysm brewing? I mean, it's a very unpleasant thing to accept. Mm-hmm. We were in the same position during World War II. Up until the moment Pearl Harbor was attacked, there were forces in control of Congress that said, we should not get involved. It's not our business. Everything will be fine. Of course, they were wrong. And most people don't know this, but the draft was still in place at that time. It had only passed by one vote. And had that not passed, the outcome of the war would have been very different. We're in exactly the same position now with global warming. And it is our generation's equivalent of World War II. It is that serious.
It is a war. It's a war. It's a war against pollution. It's a war against carbon emissions. It's a war against fossil fuel. It's a war to find alternative energy so that we can turn things around and start winning this war.
Well, and there's so many misconceptions. Right now, you can see where it's going. There's going to be some kind of climate legislation will come out of Congress within the next year, and it's going to be toothless and a compromise, and it's not going to do anything except capture sound bites. It's really awful. It's because it's the idea that we need to green our economy and start relying upon non-fossil fuel sources of energy is very threatening to people. And yes, it will be disruptive, but ultimately the idea that doing what's good for the planet is going to be bad for the economy is wrong-headed. It's exactly the opposite. Had we been doing what we should have been doing all along for the last 30 years, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in, and we'd have energy independence and much more assurances of a prosperous life for our children had we taken some common sense steps early on. Now we have to take more serious steps, but it's a pay now or pay later situation, and if we pay later, it's going to be a lot worse.
Do you think it's too late?
No, and actually now you're getting to the reason why I wrote Eco-Barons. And this environmental story is so huge and dire, it can be paralyzing, and the tendency to say, well, there's nothing I can do. What can one person do? What can any of us do? Is great, and that's a problem. So what the goal I set for myself in working on this book was to find a more human and graspable, hopeful side of the story, because it turns out there are people all over the world, rich and poor, but visionaries all, who have been engaged for years in some quite amazing environmental work on climate, on deforestation, on protecting species from extinction, and having a huge impact. And beyond their good works, really setting an example for what can be done.
Can you share a couple of those stories with us?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the first person that I focus on in the book is a fellow named Doug Tompkins, and he's a fascinating story. He started a business with his wife in San Francisco, basically in their kitchen and out of the back of their car, selling clothes that they made. That company grew and became the leading global fashion company in the 1970s and 80s, Esprit. They made millions and millions of dollars, became very wealthy. But Doug Tompkins was at heart an outdoorsman. What he really loved was mountain climbing, and he came to realize that he was engaged in an activity that was giving him great wealth, but was destroying what he valued most in the world, the natural world. And so he sold out of his company. He took that money and he moved to Chile and began buying land that was for sale to all comers. Important and large swaths of grasslands and rainforests in Argentina and Chile, throughout the region we call Patagonia, until he and his wife had accumulated over 2 million acres of irreplaceable wilderness. Now, this was not troubling to anyone down there. They liked foreign investors, but then it turned out that he wasn't doing what everyone else had done in the past, which was to exploit those resources and to cut down the trees or to extract the mineral resources. He said, no, I'm going to just preserve it the way it is. I'm going to build parks and wildlife preserves and wildlife corridors, and I'm going to restore species to their original habitats. And then it became controversial. But he stuck to his guns, and he and his second wife, Chris Tompkins, have preserved more rainforest than any individuals on the planet. They've given hundreds of millions of dollars to this cause and have been donating the land to nonprofits and directly to governments to operate more than 11 parks and preserves now, and they're still going. It's an extraordinary story. Latter-day Rockefeller. That's why I call them the eco-barons. They're sort of the robber barons for good. They have that vision and drive and scope, but they're not pillaging the landscape. They're saving it or even restoring it. So they're very, very inspiring conservationists. But they're also funding environmental groups here in the U.S. and in Latin America, giving through grants. And they've supported some organizations that otherwise would have lost their ability to keep going. And one of those is the second story I tell in EcoBarons. It's called the Center for Biological Diversity, and I call it the most effective environmental group you've probably never heard of. And these were the people who compelled the Bush administration in the last days of George Bush's presidency to protect as an endangered species the polar bear, which was a very widely reported event. And what the significance of that was, the administration had to admit that the thing driving the polar bear into extinction was global warming. And that was a first. George Bush was our global warming denier-in-chief during his 8 years in office. And for this organization that had very humble beginnings, and now is something of an environmental powerhouse, to humble the president and to get him to make a finding that he adamantly had opposed is really a game changer. Because now the law, the Endangered Species Act, compels the government to take action against this force causing the extinction not only of the polar bear but of thousands of species throughout the world, global warming. So it was a very important accomplishment, and this group has had accumulated a stellar record in enforcing the laws that we have on the books and preserving many millions of acres of United States wilderness and wilderness areas around the world. So that's just two of the stories that I relate in EcoBarons. But they're the opposite ends of the poles, because the center, the people at the Center for Biological Diversity don't have very much money at all, but they still have found a way to realize their vision and have a huge impact.
When we come back from the news at the bottom of the hour, I'd like to get your opinion on how you foresee the new administration working to help save the planet. And we'll be talking about that with our special guest this hour, Edward Humes. His website, www.ecobarons.wordpress.com. That's www.ecobarons.wordpress.com. He's the author of EcoBarons, The Dreamers, Schemers, and Millionaires Who Are Saving the Planet. Once again, his website, it's not www, it's ecobarons.wordpress.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network, and Edward Humes and I will be back on the other side of this news break as we continue live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on Talkstar. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Hamilton is right smack dab between the cities of Toronto and Niagara Falls. Right in the middle of the Great Lakes Triangle. If you'd like to give us a call, 1-877-228-8255. That's toll free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My special guest this hour is the Pulitzer Prize Award winner, newspaper journalist. His name is Edward Humes. He's also the author of Eco Barons, The Dreamers, Schemers, and Millionaires Who Are Saving the Planet. Edward, it's great having you with us. And what does Earth Day 2009 mean to you?
Well, as you noted before, this will be the first Earth Day of a new presidential administration, the first one in 30 years that has put issues like renewable energy and environmentalism back on the front burner, and making a linkage that we haven't been hearing a lot about, which is that developing things like solar and wind and energy sources and getting away from dependency on fossil fuel is going to aid in economic recovery, not hinder it, and that's exciting. So it should be a very interesting Earth Day, I think.
What can people do to participate in Earth Day and make it the beginning of a great future?
Well, if something to think about is how we can all sort of emulate this idea of being an eco-baron, because we all can think in that way, and there's things that anyone can do that can be powerful when enough of us do them, and it doesn't have to be something huge and expensive, like putting solar panels on your roof, although that's a great thing to do. It can be something small, planting a vegetable garden in the spring. That's what we did a few springs ago. We have a very large and I must say tasty vegetable garden. I give my wife the credit for that. I just dig the holes, and she has the green thumb. But the result is that we have quite a bounty that has a very short journey from where the food begins to our table. And one of the largest impacts on global climate is the transportation of food and goods long distances. So whenever we can cut that distance, not only are we getting tasty and healthy vegetables grown without pesticides, but we're also enormously lowering our greenhouse gas emissions, our carbon footprint, as it's called these days. So that's just one little thing that can be done that, if many of us did, would have a huge impact. Another thing related to diet, the average American, possibly the average North American, but definitely the average U.S. citizen, eats about 7 times as much beef as most nutritionists say would be healthy. One of the interesting things about the livestock industry is that we have basically consumed almost 30% of the Earth's surface that isn't covered by water to raise livestock and to support this immense beef addiction. And it is now the larger greenhouse gas emitter, a larger contributor to climate change than our cars. So even just cutting our beef diet in half in the U.S. would be enormous. It would be like every driver in America got a Toyota Prius instead of what we're driving around now. It would be that big. Not even to cut it to a healthful level, but just to cut it in half would be, if you wanted to do something about climate change, that would be a big one.
1-877-528-8255, toll free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My special guest, Exxon Nation, is Edward Humes. We're talking about Earth Day 2009, which is going to be on April the 22nd, I believe.
Yes, and I always know that because it's also my birthday.
You're kidding. My birthday is April 27th.
Well, there you go.
Hey,
but, Earth Day was, for whatever reason, it chose my birthday as the day to celebrate it, and it's very apt, I think, this year since I have a book called Eco Barons coming out.
Yeah.
Birthday, it's all good.
Hey, listen, if I don't talk to you before then, happy birthday, my friend.
Well, thank you very much.
And congratulations on the Pulitzer Prize. Schemers. Let's talk about the schemers.
The schemers, sure. Well, it takes the mix: people with money, people with dreams, and then people with schemes. And I was talking a little earlier about the Center for Biological Diversity. Their origin story is the ultimate schemer story because it begins with two guys who were working for the Forest Service in New Mexico as owl hooters. They were the owl hooters. They would go out at night and they would hoot like owls in the forest, hoping to spot or attract the Mexican spotted owl, which was an endangered species. And if they found them, then the trees in the U.S. forest, and this is all public lands, could not be cut down. Well, this was during the Reagan administration, and the main goal of the U.S. Forest Service was to cut trees down rather than preserve them. And the owl hooters found owls in this one tract that was destined to be logged. They said, well, you can't cut down the trees anymore. And their supervisor says, well, yes, we can. As far as we're concerned, you didn't find any owls. So that ended their government employment because they went public with their knowledge, and then they filed a petition because there's this peculiar aspect of the Endangered Species Act, law passed unanimously by the U.S. Senate in 1973 and signed by Richard Nixon. So this wasn't a liberal, wacky idea. This was a bipartisan, common-sense measure back in the day. And it gives Americans anywhere in the country the right to say, wait a minute, government, you're harming an endangered species. Stop. Everyone has standing. And no one was doing it. No one was taking advantage of it. So the scheme that these guys hatched was to actually try and force the government to follow the law. And they've been fantastically successful at this over the last 30 years. They have protected some 500 species that would otherwise be extinct. About 70 million acres of habitat had to be preserved to do that. Forests that belong to the public but would have been logged and reduced to stumps. So their little scheme, it's so interesting because they're often portrayed as outlaws and sort of being out there and being radical. And really all they're saying is just follow the law. Great scheme.
I think it's we've got to do something. And whether it's you, you're doing a great job. You're doing what it takes. And I just wonder how many people out there are just standing there with their head in the sand, waiting for everybody else to clear this mess up and not realizing that it's going to take the participation from each and every person listening tonight and those who aren't listening tonight in order to turn things around. We just can't wait for government to do everything. We have to...
No, we can't. And one thing we have to demand is cleaner, greener transportation. I read about a guy named Andy Frank. They call him the father of the plug-in hybrid. He basically came up with the modern hybrid car. He's a professor. He takes a team of college students. They could take a big old SUV and yank out the engine and put in an electric motor and battery packs and a little gas-sipping engine to occasionally come on and charge the battery. And it's amazing. They can go, suburban or a Ford Explorer. They'll get it to go 80, 90 miles without burning a drop of gasoline. And Detroit claims it's impossible. They've been working forever on this new Chevy that can go 40 miles and not burn any gas. Andy Frank's been building cars that run rings around anything Detroit does with off-the-shelf parts.
Exactly.
Nothing exotic.
Exactly.
And why aren't we all driving these cars? That's the question, because it's not
very
technology
simple.
and it's not economy, and yet his designs won't be. The car makers will not adopt them.
It's very simple because the auto manufacturers are in bed with the fossil fuel industry. There's so many kickbacks. There's so many pockets being filled. There's a gentleman in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. He makes little gizmo devices that you add to your vehicle that you can get 110 miles per gallon. There are so many...
Well, there's no reason why we need to be burning any gas in our cars because, and this is the awful thing that I learned in the course of working on this book, that California basically ordered car makers to build electric cars, not hybrids, just electric cars about 10 years ago. because the smog was so bad here. They said, if you want to sell any kind of cars in California, you're going to build these suckers. And the car makers hated it, and they sued and they lobbied, but they built these cars, and they were amazingly good cars. People are still driving them; they're treasures. Toyota had this great little SUV called the RAV4. And it gets up to 150 miles on a single charge. Now, if you ask them in Detroit, can you build that? They say it's impossible. They could do it 10 years ago when they were compelled to do it, though. But they prevailed, and they got California to back down. And it was a sad day when that happened, because we'd all be a lot better off if California, the biggest car market in the world, had stuck to its guns. We'd all be driving these cars, whether they'd be available if we wanted them, and who wouldn't want them? And then if you have a solar charging system on the roof of your house, it doesn't have to be big to charge up one car. You'd have free transportation for forever. It's a no-brainer, and yet it's not happening.
Well, I still say the reason why these things don't happen is because there are so many people in bed with each other. All they're interested in doing is making the buck. They really don't give a damn about you or I, the pollution. They're just interested in how much money they can put in their pocket, how much they can get away with, because, hey, I'm not going to be around to worry about this when it happens.
Well, and this is really where government's role has to be, because there have to be incentives. There has to be a carrot and a stick to get the private sector to behave. It was the removal of those the sticks that got us into trouble in the economy. When Carter was president, he's a much maligned former president, and his successor Ronald Reagan, much more beloved, at least by some in the U.S. But before he left office, we had all these gasoline crises and shortages, and he put in place a plan for energy independence. By the year 2000, we were going to be 25% renewable as a nation, and it was very doable. And at that time, he left office in 1981. The U.S. led the world in renewable energy, and solar and wind and geothermal, because the government supported it. It subsidized some. It gave tax breaks. It made it affordable for both industry and homeowners to adopt this technology, and it was vibrant. It was the wave of the future, and it was all wiped away, cut away, and killed once Carter left office. And it was really a historic failure of the nation's leadership when that happened, because we are now in an infinitely worse position, and still struggling to set up something like we had in place in 1981. It's really a national tragedy.
1-877-528-8255, toll free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. Edward Humes is our very special guest. His website is www.ecobarons.wordpress.com, and he is the author of Eco Barons, The Dreamers, Schemers, and Millionaires Who Are Saving the Planet. Tell me, are these millionaires also investing money in non-fossil fuel vehicles and research?
The Tompkinses have supported organizations that have been working on that, both on the policy side and the practical side, and they have their fingers in a lot of different initiatives. Organic farming, sustainable agriculture, local economies rather than global economies. They've been establishing these fascinating areas in Chile where you have a forest preserve in temperate rainforest, and they bought, in some cases they bought land from large landowners, but sometimes from subsistence farmers who had very difficult lives and were farming this difficult forest terrain, and they periodically just burn down all the trees.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. Rob Liparulo is going to be on with us in our final hour. So Serenity Moore will not be with us tonight. Apparently there was a very tragic event in her family. So Serenity, our thoughts and our prayers are with you tonight and your family. Our special guest this hour is Ed Humes. He's the author of Eco Barons, The Dreamers, Schemers, and Millionaires Who Are Saving the Planet. We're talking about Earth Day this year, which is April 22nd. It is also Ed's birthday, so not only will we be celebrating Earth Day, but we'll also be celebrating Ed's birthday. First of all, Ed, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. When do you think the light will go on in all the minds of all the people on this planet that, hey, it's a global matter. It's just not this country, this city, that city, but everyone has got to get on board this train.
Well, I think it's starting to happen. It's hard to get everyone on the same page, of course, but it often happens suddenly. People wake up, and whether it's because there's a threat to our way of life, or a threat to national security, or to our economic well-being, it's people are seeing that we can't just go on the way that we're going. And fortunately, there's some really inspiring examples of people out there who are already putting their money where their mouth is on the environment. And I think the word's getting out.
Well, you know what? We've had several people on the show. I had a marine biologist on a couple of weeks ago. And the effect that pollution and global warming is having on the ocean and the number of species that are disappearing within the ocean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Well, part of it is pollution. Part of it is climate, because all that carbon we're releasing. It took the Earth 500 million years to sequester all that carbon in the Earth. That's why they call it fossil fuel. It's
right.
Fossil fuel. And we're releasing all that. It took 500 million years. We're doing it in 100 years, putting it back in the atmosphere. And the ocean's been taking the brunt of absorbing that.
That's right.
It's been a disaster.
And then we did a show on the Amazon rainforest and the deforestation that's going on and what the global effect is on that. We've done shows on the ocean currents and how it affects weather. We're trying to do our best, and it's because of people like you who are writing books like Eco Barons, The Dreamers, Schemers, and Millionaires Who Are Saving the Planet that I believe that the light will go on and we will work together and clean this planet.
I am more hopeful now, having done the research for this book than I was 2 years ago. I think you're absolutely right.
Ed, if there's anything we can ever do to help you, you just give us a call, and you can count on us.
Thank you, Rob. That's very gracious of you, and I'll take you up on that.
Anytime, sir. Anytime. Ed, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations on a great book. And once again, if I don't speak to you before the 22nd, a very happy birthday to you.
And a happy Earth Day to you.
Thank you very much, Ed. Ed Humes, www.ecobarons.wordpress.com. He is the author of Eco Barons, The Dreamers, Schemers, and Millionaires Who Are Saving the Planet. He is also a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. So there you go. Congratulations, Ed. And once again, happy birthday. When we come back from the news at the top of the hour at 6.5 minutes past, we're going to be speaking to Rob Liparulo about his new book. And it is entitled Deadlock. All this and more as the X Zone continues right here on Talkstar. Don't go away.